Dear listeners, I would like to begin by being real here. It's 2022, and we're still trying to figure out how to empower women. The United Nations and other global bodies have warned that the progress that we have made on gender equality and women's empowerment could in fact be reversed as a result of the pandemic. In this case, shouldn't we be rather talking about the system that doesn't allow women to be empowered? A system that is so rigid and so faulty that it may just not be able to foster equal rights and equal opportunities for all. Now, I gave birth to a beautiful, strong girl for about 2 years ago. And I was truly hoping, perhaps naively so, that we would have moved beyond the need to finding ways how to empower women and girls. Not because such work isn't absolutely pivotal, but because I had hoped my daughter could have joined a collective of humankind that could have come further than this. How much longer and how much further do we need to keep paving the way, making space, and building support systems in order for women to thrive organically as the powerhouses we are? When can we wake up to a world and a system where girls and women and anyone who identifies as female already, and no questions asked, has a set, safe, and spacious seat ready for her to take? When will the microphone not only be handed to us, but the volume turned high enough so that everyone, everywhere, can hear our voices and sense our strength? Well, at least we're in this together, fighting the good fight, so let's do this. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast on empowering women through food and social gastronomy, and more specifically talking about global behavioral change connected to it. This episode is a part of a series of podcasts thanks to the support of the Nordic Talks, the Nordic Council of Ministers, and the Social Gastronomy movement. My name is Edith Salminen, and I will be your moderator today. I'm a food culture specialist with a background in social anthropology of food and gastronomic sciences, which means that I am seeking everywhere I go and everyone I meet this understanding of the complexity of food systems, and above all, the connection between food, people, and the society in foodscapes. But now, let me do what I've been looking forward to do so much. I want to introduce you to the 3 very empowered women that we have as speakers here today. We have Dina Saoudi joining us from Amman, Jordan. We have Judy Matu joining us from Mombasa, Kenya. And we have Anna Tibblin from Stockholm, Sweden. And I want to begin by you, Dina. You are co-founder of 7 Circles, an investment and consulting agency focusing on establishing strategic partnerships, creating new net revenue streams, and building sustainable, impactful solutions. But you're also co-founder and head of Empowering Through. And this is a new breed of social enterprise with the purpose of empowering ecosystems to enable individuals economically and socially. Dina, I'm super inspired by your TED Talk, and that's why I'm going to ask you, how do you really feel about today's topic?
Well, thank you so much for this. First, happy Valentine's Day to those celebrating. It's good to be here on Valentine's Day. So how do I really feel about the subject of empowering women or empowering women through social? Okay, so let's start with basics, right? For me, I think everybody's already empowered, women especially. It's just that the systems are not empowered enough. They're not working. So therefore, we're not able to actually identify, see these women and make sure that they have the tools necessary so that they can grow and do whatever they need to do. So that's how I feel. And talking about social gastronomy, this world is already equipped to feed every human being on it. So somewhere down the line, something went wrong to make sure that people are hungry. So whatever it is that we've done as humans, we need to undo so that we can go back to a world that we once knew for the sake of our children, including your daughter, Edith, and my sons, and every other child in this world. So how I feel is that it's about time we stop what we've been doing, rethink about how we're going to do it for generations to come. Does that help?
Thank you so much, Dina. It's so great to have you with us. Going to move on to Judy Matu. You are a highly experienced community builder with a rich experience within the public sector and the NGO world. Your work consists of empowering communities connected to economic empowerment, food security, and climate action. And you're also the founder and national chairlady of the Association of Women in Agriculture in Kenya. And you are a steering committee member of the UN Women FAO Economic Empowerment of Women through Climate Smart Agriculture Program, and much more. But tell us, Judy, what gives you the energy to get up in the morning and do this work you do? Please unmute, Judy.
Thank you. Growing up, I watched my mom struggle every day to take me to a good private school. And it was not always that way. My dad was before a bank manager. And so life was good. But then the job came to an end. And so it was my mom who had to ensure that we continue with school and not change to a different school. So she had to change her lifestyle, and how she changed to manage how the household was running. She would wake up very early in the morning, milk the cows, and had to go very early in the morning and sell the milk door to door. And you can imagine how early that was to ensure that everybody had breakfast. And by doing that, then we had to stay in school. There was food on the table. And because of that, I saw how much she struggled. She really struggled. We had to sacrifice so much just for us to remain in school. And growing up, I knew that was what I wanted to do, change the lives of people like my mother, who are struggling so much to keep their households afloat. And how would I do that? Was to see how best to work with women farmers, especially the vulnerable farmers, to give them that economic boost through empowerment, and also to ensure that there is also sustainability in doing that agriculture for climate action, economic empowerment, and gender equality. Because when such women are empowered, then they have a voice, and their voice is heard and respected. And so when we do something and we see lives transformed, we see women able to fend for their families and grow in their own capacity and in the society, when they are representatives in the leadership by women voices, then that gives me the energy to wake up every morning and do that once more and change a new life. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. We're absolutely thrilled to have you with us here today. It's wonderful. Last but certainly not least, Anna Tibblin, the activist turned business owner turned Secretary General of We Effect, which is the world's largest cooperative developmental organization working to end hunger and poverty, supporting small-scale farmers in 20 countries. So Anna, with your experience and background, do you still think that we will still be talking about empowering women, say, in 20 years?
Well, first and foremost, it's great to see you, and happy Valentine's Day, everyone. And answer to your question, I hope so. I really, really hope so, because I don't think it's no end game, and we're never going to finish. We won't ever be able to just, check the boxes and so on. But imagine in 20 years, if we can at least or why 20? Let's do it by 2030, right? We've agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals. So by 2030, we've eradicated poverty. Now let's start working on the injustice parts. And imagine the potential. Imagine what we will be able to do. But I'll also share, Edith, you talked about your 2-year-old daughter. I have 2 daughters myself, who the oldest now is 27. And I thought the same as you. I thought, certainly we'll be able to take care of this. I mean, and then you discover, haven't we come further? And that's when you sort of keep knocking your head into the systems and all of those structural challenges, which we'll talk more about and so on. But yes, we have to keep talking about this always. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So dear listeners, now you truly understand the magnitude of knowledge and level of these women here today. We're serving you only the best. So I bet you want more, so let's dig in. I'd like to start by talking a little bit more about the power of food and using food as a social tool. In this podcast series, we've highlighted women's significant roles and inherent connection to food and nutrition in various ways. And we've also talked about how women are increasingly taking bolder initiatives within food systems, for example, in productivity, innovation, and leadership. We can see this happening on all levels, both in rural and urban contexts. But let's shed light on the ordinary women, those ordinary women that all of you three encounter, going about your everyday lives and them going about their everyday lives. Dina, I'd like to begin by you. You are a powerhouse entrepreneur. And coming from that perspective, I'd like to ask your opinion. What is the most important factor to boost women to really get started, to master their own path and livelihood?
Okay, thank you for calling me a powerhouse. That's you and everybody here on stage. I think confidence. I know this is probably not what you expected me to say, but I'm sure Judy and Anna can agree. We have an issue with a woman between her and herself. Before I talk about your community, before I talk about the culture, before I talk about everybody else, you need as a woman to believe that you're worthy of those dreams, that you are worthy of this path, and that we need you as a world. And I feel if we could just have them talk to themselves for 2 seconds, just break down those fears, to break down these insecurities that come with not believing she's enough. If we could do that, we'd see a very big shift and change immediately across all sectors, not just the food world, right? In general, I mean, as I'm sure you all know here, female founders are globally 3%, less than 3% of female founders are invested in. So 3% global, not my world, which is the Middle East or in Kenya or in other places, the world, San Francisco too, right? So there is something off. And then we need to, I think, go back to the basics of communication between one and herself. So I think I would start with that.
Thank you so much. Can you go a little bit further on this idea that that women have this inherent connection to food, but still they lack this confidence. They have mothers and grandmothers and generations of women that have this knowledge and this skill with food. But why is that skill still not enough to boost confidence? What do you think?
So for me, there are different things. So her ability to feed the loved ones, like for example, cook for them or grow the food in the farm or so, is different than her starting and scaling her culinary business. And my issue is with that gap, because I'm sure most women are cooking right now. I have no doubt. And I'm sure a whole lot of us are cooking, but who's paying us to cook? So there are many initiatives to allow these women to cook from home. And so actually they can support themselves and their loved ones. And we need to start thinking, she's not going to leave her home. Okay, I think at some point we need to accept the fact that most women cannot leave, whether be it their children or the elderly at home. So how can we create other projects and other platforms that allows them to cook from home? Maybe we can give them more ingredients and so forth to allow them to make enough money to feed themselves and their loved ones so that they're financially independent, that they believe they can be businesswomen too. So I feel like that's the gap. It's not that she doesn't deal with food every day. She does. It's just that how is she making sure that everything related to food is allowing her to be independent financially too?
That's really, really important. And yes, I have seen that myself as well, working in Latin women in the Mission District in California and in San Francisco. Very important. That little distinction there. Thank you so much, Dina. Anna, let's move on to you. Women are, of course, paving their own way, and there's a lot of female activism for empowering women. You have a background in activism, and I'm sure that women's issues were important to you back then. What would you say that are the strengths of grassroots female activism today connected to food issues?
I think there are many aspects, but I think maybe the most important one compared to when I was young a long time ago, is when it's that we are able to connect. We can sit in this kind of a dialogue like we're doing now. If we look at the Food Systems Summit, for example, and the great inclusion that was managed during that process, on one hand with civil society, business sector, etc., but also that thousands of grassroots organizations that decided not to participate in the Food Systems Summit because they didn't think it was inclusive enough, they were still able to dialogue there were still meetings, and we could do that through technology, but also through experience. Let me share an example. We work in Guatemala and support grassroots cooperatives there, often women-led cooperatives, who became incredibly isolated during the pandemic, of course, like the rest of the world. But because everyone had access to a cell phone, even the most simple kind of smartphone, you could still mobilize. Women could mobilize and start moving and carrying out alternatives, doing alternative things because of the pandemic. And that's because we have this global technical experience that would never have happened 20 years ago. You're inspired by other women, you see other experiences, you can also access knowledge in a way that wasn't possible before. And also in many of the countries where all of us work, we know that there's an ever-shrinking space for civil society organizations and for mobilization, for example. There also, the internet and global interconnectivity is a support in that sense for a more global activism. So I think that we've come a really long way in that sense.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I feel like this is very much related to what Dina was saying about how to bridge that gap between home and outside of home, and that cell phone, that one device, and just a few social media apps can make a huge difference there. And you can see other women taking that small but huge leap forward. Thank you so much, Anna. Judy, now I know that you have introduced social gastronomy as a really powerful tool at the African Union. Could you give us an example from your context on how women organize themselves around food issues to drive change?
Thank you, Dina. It is very interesting. You know, food cuts across everything within the society. Food brings us together, and lack of food can cause strife, meaning division. And so for communities to build, for communities to stay together, for the society to grow, then the issue of food must come in as first and foremost as a priority, top priority, from the household all the way to the policy level. But unfortunately, we find that that is not the case, and especially, unfortunately, at the policy level. So how do we ensure that, social gastronomy is a conversation that is running not just at our level here, but it's also penetrating within all the levels, from government all the way to the households. My conversation, which I was honored to have during the AU pre-summit, captured the importance of having these conversations, of the importance of food and the entire food systems, first at planning level, secondly at implementation, at production and sustainability. And how we organize ourselves, or how in a larger context, how the women organize themselves, is especially through what we call chamas, but chamas are groups where they have they come together in form of a cooperative, sometimes not fully structured cooperative, what we call table banking, where the women will come around and contribute some money, little money, and that money is put in a kitty, and it is accessible in form of a soft loan to the women. And they're able to grow their small agribusinesses. They're able to do some level of economic empowerment, whether it is at production, at processing, or whichever level within the value chain. And apart from just that table banking, I would also like to speak about what Anna has mentioned, the digital platforms. You know, technology has come in a big way. So instead of just having these women meet physically, and especially during this COVID-19 pandemic season, the digital platform has come in a way that is helping women to gather, to meet virtually, and with a platform, a technology that is enabling them to also have the same kind of table banking, but in a virtual way. Now, the challenge comes in where we have some women who are not fully tech survey, and some may not even have the gadgets to allow them to participate in those kind of platforms. So for those who can't, then they have to just do the physical way. But we are very careful about the COVID protocols. And those who can, and there are many, in Kenya, we are lucky to be quite ahead digitally. And so we have at least every woman having, even if it's the USSD, the very basic phone that can link them into the platform. So that is one of the way that they are trying to grow these food systems, and the food is bringing them together. And then we can talk about what we are doing as an organization, allowing food to be the biggest player in economic empowerment, climate action, and gender equality. When the COVID-19 came, as an organization, initially we were just dealing with the rural women. But then we discovered that the women living in urban informal settlements were the ones hit hardest, especially because when the government said there will be a lockdown and a curfew and everybody has to stay at home, that was that was a hit, something that hit them very hard, because these are people who live from hand to mouth. They have to go to a job every day to earn a living because they are casual laborers. And so when the organizations and the industries closed, then you can just imagine the challenges these women faced. And so we reached out to them and we started something we call resilient recovery for vulnerable mothers living in the urban slums. So slums are the informal settlements within the urban centers. And here we are using food as a way of reaching out to empower them economically and also to clean their environment. Within the slums, there's so much pollution in all ways. And so we are doing urban farming, which you have also extended to edible gardens in schools, and especially schools that don't have large spaces to plant their own food. So that is one way we are bringing the women together, and they are doing activities around food that is bringing them towards economic empowerment, and we have very good success stories in that. And then within that, we're also training them on soil health so that they can not just grow food, but quality food, and and boost the health of the soil around their areas. And also agroforestry, that is with the rural women. We are doing a lot of agroforestry. In fact, on Wednesday, we are hosting the National Agroforestry Strategy Public Consultation Forum within our compound. We are lucky to be sitting in that. And why I have mentioned that is agroforestry, apart from the strong element of land restoration, it is also boosting food security and economic empowerment. And having women sit at the decision-making level of this agroforestry, because you know, when it comes to land rights and land use in our context, it can be a very complicated issue. And so when we speak at the strategy level, then we are also telling the policymakers that we need to have very good policies that are going to allow women to make decisions about what can we plant, what trees can we plant, what can we do with the land, and to have that kind of right to use and to own the benefits of what those trees bring about. So, yes, it's a wide context, and that is what I can say for now. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to come back to these little details a little bit further on. Thank you so much, Judy, for that. For those of you who are listening who aren't so familiar with social gastronomy, I just want to give you a little glimpse into what it is. This movement really uses the power of food to generate social change by, for example, addressing social inequality, nutritional improvement, engaging people to leverage their skills connected to food and social good. This is a global movement by now. And it has taken many shapes and forms depending on the economic and sociocultural context of the community, the region, or the country. And if you're interested in knowing more, there's a website that you can go to, and there might even be some activity in your area. So please get informed when it comes to social gastronomy. All right, ladies. So let's move on and say that we want to see more of those examples and these cases that we just talked about, because we need more of this. what would you say that are the main ingredients in empowering women within a food context? Dina, let me begin by you. We spoke prior to this live podcast, and you said something which I took with me, and I've been thinking about since, is that women should not, in fact, be treated as charity cases. And you were talking about that a little bit earlier as well. You hinted on that. Could you further share something on this issue with us, please?
Sure. I'm having some technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. No problem.
So if I heard you correctly, it's previously I said that women should not be treated as charity, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I see this a lot, especially I think somebody from the Middle East, and I think the same thing goes for a lot of people in Africa. I'm sure Judy can relate, but it's almost like we're incapable of defending ourselves, or being able to. And women, it's a general conversation, like they can't help themselves, so we need to do this thing for them, and it becomes so common in terms of how we communicate to women that's almost expected. The female refugees, God help them. Did you talk to them? These women are powerhouses. They're doing so much. The people in Africa, Judy can relate, and the people in the East, and actually people all around the world, and women all around the world are very powerful, very strong. And I personally don't like that kind of conversation sometimes, especially the word empowering can be very de-empowering, or whatever the English word is for the exact opposite of empowering, right? Because all of a sudden it's like almost like they're not enough. So we need to do something to make sure that they get there. And I'm saying this to you because I think we need to change the way we look at the word empowering. Empowering is not necessarily that we as individuals are needed to make the women empowered. It means that we need to work in terms of a system that allows them to be, so that we can see them, because they're perfect as they are. Our job is just to identify and show them, provide them the tools if necessary, but they're perfect, right? They're very strong as is. And when we talk to these women, I think there's sometimes we talk to them as though we're above, like, oh, this woman, she's a working woman, so she knows more than those who are at home. I was at home. I was working. I was a stay-at-home mom for a few years. It is much more work. Okay, I'm in board meetings now. It's much easier to be in a board meeting for 4 hours than it is to manage babies. Oh my God, breastfeeding. No comments, right? I'm not going to talk about changing diapers every 2 seconds. So we don't talk about that. It's almost like it's less, when she's not working, when she's not providing. And I feel like if you could shift the conversation a little bit in terms of how we identify and how we look at women, that they're just enough. They're able to come up with their own perspectives and to hear them. And then if we are going to provide them with anything, then we're going to be learning from them too. That maybe they are the ones who should be guiding all of us as a world in how to better serve them and serve us all. So I hope that was what you asked for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. This actually, this is actually a great bridge to Anna. Anna is I'm asking you this, and I hope that you can put yourself in a perspective of a Swedish woman in a Nordic context, even though I know that you're working very much internationally and all. But how do you feel when you hear this? I'm myself from Finland, and it's not in this day and time. We don't necessarily feel that we need that much empowerment, because, like Dina say, we feel empowered. We have the power. We don't wait around until someone empowers us. What do you think is key, like from your perspective? Like, what has been important for you to be where you are, and not only you but all other Nordic women?
I think it's really important to see, first, just to agree totally with what Dina's saying, and to see our own historic and whatever context, because it is, as you say, Edith, yes, we live in a free country with democratic elections, etc. But the most common cause of death in Sweden is being killed, that women are killed by their partners. This is one of the most equal countries in the world. So it's also to have the perspectives. There's no end game, like we were talking about before. That's the local context. When it comes to in working globally and supporting each other, I also agree with Dina on this. Empowerment can be a really lousy word because you can hide a lot of stuff in it, right? And it's like you can pretend that, or that we can do development for somebody else. Of course you can't do that. All you can do is, like you said, share tools, platforms, facilitate, and think that if we're ever going to manage to, eradicate poverty and injustice, that means power sharing. And it means acknowledging that we all have the same rights. So the women that are now at home cooking, yes, we need to help install confidence. We can do that in many different ways. But we also have to give food the importance that it has as a, call it a tool for social change, and not just something that you do because you happen to be a woman and it's your, your plight in life, so to say. I think as a Swedish woman coming from a very privileged country, I think it's also important to say that Swedish development cooperation is something I'm incredibly proud of as a Swedish citizen. It's world leading and so on, but it's not a solution. We will not change the world through projects. So it's important that we acknowledge also that change requires justice. Development cooperation is still very important, but it's not an end goal. It's just a tool. So, I can go on forever, but just to agree, basically.
Thank you so much, Anna. This actually gives us a nice bridge to Judy now. Judy, when we talked in preparation for this live sending, you introduced me to a term which I hadn't heard before, but it makes absolute sense. It's not new in that sense. But you talked about time poverty, and especially time poverty connected to women and nutritious food and access to food. I would love if you could talk a little bit more about that and how that time poverty is connected to the empowerment of women.
Well, thank you. I was really inspired when Anna and Dina were talking and trying to really demystify that empowerment terminology. And wow, I could listen to that forever because it makes so much sense. And listening to them, coming from different continents, it really shows that at the bottom line, we are all women, all faced with this kind of hurdles that we need to work together to break, and to, the voices need to be listened irrespective of which country you come from, and that women are our powerhouse. When you allow the women to lead, I think we'll have less trouble in this world. So in matters time poverty, it is true that women are mostly the caregivers at home. And so there's a lot of unpaid care work and domestic work that occupies most of the women. And they spend so much time in this unpaid care work and the domestic chores that they actually lack quality time to work on other areas. Care is very important. And as women, I think we are naturally nurturers, and it may sometimes be assumed that that is all that we are good for. But like we have all explained, women are powerhouses. Women are able to do anything that they are given, depending on what one is skilled with. So this is in relation to that kind of time. We are doing. We are addressing unpaid care work and unpaid care and domestic work, and we have this tool that we have been using to help us assess that. It's called the Rapid Care Assessment Tool, and it has a time calculator that helps us just to see how much time the caregivers spend in care work vis-a-vis, and that is for women. It has a women and men comparison. And we did one in a place called Kitui County. And when these women were listing everything they do from the moment they wake up to the moment they sleep, you'll be surprised that there was these women that spend 19 out of 24 hours in unpaid care and domestic work. And part of this involves some things that we may actually not, ignore. Like if he has to wake up, she has to wake up and prepare clothes for the husband, or including conjugal duties. We put that under, because that's time. That's the woman's time as well, and all that. So she spends 19 hours. So how much time does she have to actually take part in agribusiness, in sustainable agriculture, in even taking care of herself? Sometimes some of these women will look so unkept, not that she doesn't value herself, or she wouldn't want to look good, but she just does not have time for that. And so what we are looking at is how can we salvage this situation? We need to first recognize that it exists. Time poverty really exists, and it is stealing so much from the women and the other caregivers. So after recognizing, how can we reduce this? How can we reduce the time? By redistributing it amongst the household people, or in other ways that we can help. How can this be represented so that even the policy can come on board and we have care infrastructure in place? We have women who spend about 3 hours looking for water, especially in arid and semi-arid areas, and during drought. They can really spend a lot of time, a whole day looking for water. And that's not just all that they need in the house. They'll still have to go look for firewood. They still have children to feed. Just imagine, and that's one woman in one household. So if the government would bring water close to her house, that should spend 30 minutes instead of 3 hours. If we would have energy efficient options and alternatives around her, then it will be easier. If we can have early education centers around her, then she has somebody to take care of her children while she's doing something else. And when we have all this done, the woman will have so much time to now take part in economic activities that will boost her household and their health, and everything. The nutrition of that whole household will be better, much more better. So the time that is stolen, we call it time poverty, because we can do something about it. We need to do something about it. This is our election year, by the way. And one of the things we are trying so hard to talk to the women about is choose your leaders wisely. Talk to them. If they come to you and they want a re-election, ask them, what have you done to reduce my time? How much have you brought? How much development that have you brought to reduce my time, the time that I spend going to look for things that should be closer to me? If they can't answer the hard questions, then you also need to make a very wise decision. So that is, in a nutshell, what I would say about time poverty. But it's broader. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judy. And this just gets me thinking that time poverty. I'm sitting here. My child is at daycare, and I have a partner who is taking a big portion of the household work and all. But there's something about us women that even though we are handed time, we still manage to not take that time for ourselves. I don't know if you can recognize that there's sort of like a qualitative and quantitative time poverty. I'm just, my brain is like having all these thoughts now. Thank you so much, Judy. I'd like to move on to talk a little bit about roles and levels of power, and how we can perhaps start changing structures and therefore coming to that behavioral change that we are hoping for. Judy, you mentioned a little bit what the results of the pandemic has been, and how it has obviously shed light on both very negative and but also positive aspects. And one thing that I would deem positive definitely is that various food issues connected to women have sort of mushroomed. And even though they might not be pretty, they're still out there now, and they're more visible than ever before. And also COVID-19 has shown resilience, even though it has also showed weakness in surprising places and constellations. So I'm a little bit keen on going in this topic now. I would like to ask Anna to begin. We are talking about women being empowered and doing work to empower women, but who is really the one who is empowering us? Who who has the stick at this point in this relay race, and who should it be passed on to?
I love this question. Just say, I think, but we spoke a bit about it a bit earlier, right? And the empowering has to be done by every woman herself, of course. And I think I'd like to quote, do you remember Hans Rosling, the professor who in international health, and he passed some years ago, but he used to say that the best entrepreneurs in the world are women who live in poverty, because they have no choice. Otherwise, they wouldn't survive. Otherwise, their children wouldn't survive, and so on. So it means that every single person has inherent capacity. It's about having the tools, and it's having the means, and it's having one's rights respected by the government in the country where you live and by your partner, etc., etc. So I think, okay, so what has to happen then? Who's passing the stick to who? I think there are many sticks that have to be passed. One, that women's organizations also continue to focus on issues such as food, acknowledge that food is a tool for change and not just a duty that has to be carried out. It's actually a central part of a feminist agenda. And I don't think it's been seen as that very commonly. I think that's incredibly important. I think it's equally important that all of us who work in the development sector see women and food as an empowerment issue, so that we provide the right platforms, if you will, that we listen to women and to provide these platforms. When we come to big business, also has the stick. We know that worldwide, women own only 13% of all land. And we know that land is a fundamental asset in order to drive, any business, etc., when it comes to food. So how are we going to promote more equality? How are we going to ensure that women have access and right to land? How women have access to finance, to invest, etc., etc. So many, many sticks all over the place. And I think take the sticks that you have and pass them on, and maybe they can multiply. Maybe that's the way to think about it.
I love that. I love that I love the thought that I potentially have many sticks that I can pass. I really like that. There's too often, I think, we focus on that one brilliant thing or that one solution. And this, there's a huge chance that one egg will crack. It's better to have many, I guess. Judy, moving on to you, connected to what Anna was saying, many sticks to many people. You yourself are doing, you have one foot doing, grassroots work and taking small steps on local level, but at the same time you are, doing big important work, moving to shift big power dynamics and moving towards a paradigm shift. What should be done? Where should we be focusing our energy on? Because I'm sure that not everyone feels that they have the same energy as you have. Where, those who are listening, where should they begin? On what level? What should they do?
I would say change starts with me. Change starts with each one of us. That's where it should all start. The moment you recognize there's a need for change, that is a right beginning. And then from there, you need to talk to like-minded people, and especially people who are also proactive. Because when we also say that when we are many, then our voice cannot be ignored. For us, the approach is first to sensitize and create the awareness of the needed change by listening to the grassroots people. Because again, you don't impose, it has to come from them. And by speaking and interacting with the grassroots people, then you understand the challenges that they are going through. And this is the moment where now we begin with the awareness creation on what can be done. So for us to drive change, the power is with the people. And these people, the more they are, the more the pressure. And now, the moment these people realize the importance of taking part in policy processes at the grassroots, then the wheels start to turn. It may not be fast. And then the other approach that we use is also engaging with the policymakers directly. By directly means understanding and taking in these statements from the grassroots and presenting them to the policymakers, because they must be part of the process. And so we speak for the people, and the policymakers have the opportunity to listen to the grassroots. The unfortunate bit is sometimes they just sit in their air-conditioned ivory towers and make decisions for people who have no idea what is happening. And the moment they invest too much money in ideas that were just built up in their heads, then we just have white elephants in form of programs. So they are not helping anybody. They may take very nice glossy pictures showing the projects that they are doing on the ground, but it is really not impacting the people on the ground. So we believe in the ground up approach, where you first listen to the people and exactly what they need and their needs, and then that goes up. And then the decisions are based on what the need is on the ground. So for us, we believe there is more power when you approach the grassroots first. Identify what the issues are. And then when the government or the policymakers are working on their fiscal policies, then it becomes much easier to have targeted allocations, financial allocations that will go and impact the people directly. And so that has been the approach. For the AU, that now it is more of a national, it's a much wider scope, but still the impacts will be felt by the people on the ground. So it is important to empower the grassroots first, and then from there move up. And that has been our approach. It has borne some fruits. It is not a very fast process. It's very slow, but sure. And that is why it's also very important for the people to be very careful when they are electing or voting for their leaders, because they need people who will listen to them, people who identify with their issues. Only then can we have change. Otherwise, we'll just be talking. It will be rhetorical.
Yes.
I hope that communicates.
No, I love that. I really believe that's true. And especially when it comes to food issues, in my experience, I do a lot of my work on a local level. And I feel that what is really important is this, you use the word sensitize. And I really like that we need to sensitize decision makers and the ones who are hierarchically higher up, because even if they are there, making the decisions that impact food issues, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are experts on it. And in my experience, it's quite rarely the case. That's why there should be this it's such a good resource for decision makers to have an open dialogue and use the grassroots as they're almost like a power bank, that's where they get their fuel, and that should be all working together. I really I love that. I think it's so important. Dina, I hope you're with us. I got scared when I saw you leaving us. You're here with us.
I'm
wonderful, here. Wonderful. So Dina, now that you're listening to your co-speakers here, what do you think? Is there even potential in this system and in these structures? Is it like, can we work with that? Is there potential in the system, or should we do something different?
So I'm just going to go back for a bit. And I was talking about amazing entrepreneurs. And in my mind, I went to Judy's mom because of her story, right? Like, here's a woman who couldn't take care of her daughter. And Judy, you're a powerhouse, but obviously you had a woman there every single day teaching you that, oh my God, this is possible. And for me, I think we learn from examples. So make sure that we see more women, very strong, powerful women globally, everywhere we go. And if we have more of that, then I'm not really sure what you mean by the system. Do you mean like the government system, the legal system? You mean like, which systems are we talking about?
Well, we can talk about politics and global bodies, how they consider these issues, who is sitting and deciding. We can talk about big summits that abide to certain norms and structures that we have.
Sure. Well, I don't know if a lot of people are going to like me after what I say, but we have a lot of people who talk in the US. I mean, I lived in San Francisco for 10 plus years. A lot of them are women. I don't see the American women really surviving much, right? When it came down to being in school, I'm being very direct and honest here. There was one issue that happened with a child. They called the mom, they didn't call the dad. Well, okay, we're in the States, we're in San Francisco, and you didn't think that would happen, right? So somewhere down the line, I think globally we're very similar. And even if you have more women speaking, does not necessarily mean that there are actually going to be a change in the paradigm and how it's all done. And I'm going to go back. It's a capitalist world. So somewhere down the line, there is something fundamentally wrong with the infrastructure behind how we're operating as humans, where we're not as kind, not as giving, not as community driven, not as, so there are many issues. Women being there with the rest of the men is only one. So for me, yeah, sure, it could be wonderful to work with current systems. I don't know. Maybe I think it's, again, time to talk, to take a moment like this one. I mean, if I was going to work with my government in Jordan, that means I'm not working in Kenya. I'm not working with all of you in Sweden and so forth. So therefore, maybe we should actually have more collaborative work where we think together of what's actually a universal kind of fundamentals that we would like to see everywhere, and maybe have more of that. But that's just how I see the world. So maybe not very favorite by many.
No, but it's interesting because even though, we're all parts of our local food systems, as local as in our neighborhood sometimes, our blocks and everything, but still those microsystems do not exist in some sort of emptiness. They are all connected to another bigger system, which then gives its strength and ability to survive. So it all, I think that I like what you say, Dina, that we should maybe be collaborating and we should open up more, and we should really, we've been doing this learning from each other for decades, but maybe we should do it in a different way, find a more real, more open way to doing it.
Just as a simple example, I mean, we're all using iPhones relatively, right? Or really, we're not that creative in the phones that we use, on the clothes that we wear these days, the cars that we use. So somewhere down the line, maybe it's time to rethink structures too that are working everywhere. I mean, we're using, I don't even know what this is, StreamYard. I've never seen it before, but Zoom is what we usually use, or others. And here are all of us communicating. And
Yes.
I mean, Judy was mentioning before about women who don't have access to technologies. I'll tell you, like in the refugee camps, they had a big program here assuming that women don't have phones. The women have better phones than mine. Okay, so it's priorities and what is important. And today, really, cell phone is what's keeping a lot of Syrians that became refugees all around the world actually connected with each other. They didn't have a government that allowed them to get to know and to connect with each other, but the phone was able to. They found each other on Facebook. So the world's different, and I think it's about time we rethink everything and how we've done it, and start really thinking with each other on coming up with solutions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dina. As a last sort of topic, this is a really one that this is me thinking from my very egoistic point of view. I have you wonderful women here, and I can, brainstorm with you. So let me do this here. Can we like take this chance to right some wrongs around this topic? I would love that. Because I personally feel that there's so many misconceptions when it comes to women's empowerment. And, Dina, you've been talking a little bit about this, that we toss this word empowerment, and we actually don't stop thinking, what does it actually mean? What does it mean that we use it in this context? And so, people, when they go home and they go to bed at night after sitting in big panels and summits and conferences and all, and I would like to, be that fly somewhere that understands how did that information actually land, because sometimes I feel like it is, misconceived in so many ways. So I would like to take a round here, and beginning with you, Anna, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions around this topic?
I think the biggest misconception is the other half, men, and generally that women have to own, or we have to own, our own empowerment, but we also need to find support from men, but on our conditions. So that we don't wind up in that, yeah, but those are women's issues. Let the women stand over there and do their empowerment thing, while the world sort of goes on over here. So I think it's about how we involve men in the work that we do, how we speak with men in the work that we do, and how we demand accountability from men in the work that we do. I think it's really important. We need more male feminists, basically. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Moving on to you, Judy, please.
I think I really concur with what Anna has said, that the biggest misconception is just how men are supposed to understand our efforts. The biggest misconception from my end would be how misconstrued women empowerment and feminism has been. And it feels like a fight. It is not a fight. Women are simply trying to belong because they belong. It is a right for them to be. And so it is not a fight. And they should not feel intimidated by women who have already claimed their power, they have their voices, and they can go ahead and do what it is that they want to do. So it is a matter of teamwork. We need to team up. It is not a fight. It's not a competition. We should do this together, and they should actually be the biggest cheerleaders of what women are trying to do. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm applauding here in my little office. Dina, please, over to you.
So while I agree with Anna and Judy, yes, I have boys. I'd like them to be men who definitely stand for women's rights at some point. But I'm going to go back and talk about women and supporting other women. I feel like the misconception here is that women are all on the same side, all working with each other. And I've actually seen that some women actually are the biggest enemies out there. If women can, and I've seen it in all, I've worked in too many places, and I have 20 examples. And I feel like let's just take a second, be like, women, when you're there in those leadership positions, you don't need to be a man. By that, I mean, you don't need to be more angry and upset and stereotypically whatever you think a man should be as a boss or as a manager. I, for example, every single week have a mental health check-in with my team, because for me, I am very aware that they're not okay. I'm sorry if this is not taken as a man's thing. It's more of a woman's thing to check on feelings. I'm happy being me. I'm not going to change who I am to fit a stereotype of what a leader should be. So I feel, and this is a very simple example, but I feel if women could be themselves, whatever they want to be. They want to be, talk about feelings and vulnerabilities, for example, if they don't want to open doors and whatever it is, whatever, right? Like, let her be. And then please stand with your fellow woman. Check in, make sure she's okay. It's a very lonely road. The road towards, I think it's, I'll especially stay-at-home moms, and I want to go back to stay-at-home moms who are not working. It is so lonely. Who's there knocking on her door? At least when we work with each other. But the stay-at-home mom is there taking care of children, taking care of God knows who, without sometimes a support system, anybody checking in on her and making sure that she's okay. And she's not paid. And she's not supported, talking about that. So I think women should just check in on women more. So, sorry.
I love that. No, don't say sorry. I love that. I try to tell myself every day, you don't have to be a man. You don't have to do this. It's all from how I wear my hair, what I get dressed, how I stand, how I sit. I don't have to. I can be a woman and be powerful and be in those positions where men are, but I can be myself. I love that. Absolutely. We're coming towards an end of this fine podcast, even if I absolutely I'm more convinced than ever that we should be talking about this even more, and we should all get paid to talk here for like 10 hours more, and people should listen, right? I would like each of you now as a wrap up to give a seed of inspiration to those who are listening. Give that seed, and then it's up to each listener to do what they want to do, if they want to plant it or if they want to give it to someone else. But these seeds are so important. So I want action points from each and every one of you that can work as a seed. Anna, I would kindly ask you to begin.
Thank you. Then I'd say 1, collect your sticks. And think about passing them on. Every stick has to multiply. It's not enough. So multiply, collect them and multiply them. Two is identify women around you and say, what can you do to support them? It can be very simple things, but just make it concrete. Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about the third one, but that's where I am at the moment. I'm still stuck on the sticks.
The sticks so good. It's a great thing. I'm sure many people will remember that after. Judy,
Yeah.
let's get over to you, please.
Thank you. Mine would be first, political goodwill. For me, that is very critical. If we have to get to where we want to go, then with political goodwill, it makes our journey easier, much more smoother, and a little faster. The other one is public engagement. We must encourage, sensitize more women, especially those who are at the grassroots, the vulnerable ones, to get to public engagements where they can speak, because their voices are important. So their voices, they have to be bold, and they can't feel intimidated. Then the other thing would be partnerships. Sometimes you have so much to do, but very little resources to do it. And when there are partnerships that will support and create synergy in enabling what you're doing, get to another step or scale up and reach out to more, then that will make more women benefit from the activities and the conversations that we are having here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Judy. And last but not least, Dina, I invite you to put the cherry on top of this sundae, please.
Sure. I'm so sorry I couldn't hear you because of technical difficulties. You all freeze. I don't know. Anyway. So for me, my take-home messages are probably three. That's the idea, right? The take-home messages. Okay. So probably the three C's. Maybe it's nice to make it a C. The first one is confidence. Make sure you have it and work on it if you don't, because we really need to hear you, no matter who you are who's listening, man or woman, by the way. So second of all, probably connection. Making sure that women are well connected with each other, with a very understanding that we're all in this together, and finding ways of just breaking down the boundaries and the masks, that are not necessary. We are all on this together. And as Judy said, we are in the lower pile. So might as well really connect with each other and see what we can do. And the last one is clarity. And I say this because it's never clear of what the ask is really and how to best support all of us. Because all of us is almost assumed. The development, what do you call them? The consultants or the experts come in assuming they know what's best in those communities. But really, we should do the exact reverse, look at it from the different side, ask the women what they need, and maybe provide solutions for them. Clarity in how we're going to be working with each other towards solving this one issue that is affecting all of us. So yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, wow. I feel, oh, I have more than seeds. I have sticks and seeds, and I have everything. I have a whole bag full of wonderful things. As for myself, I would just like to send out a little reminder, and this we've been saying many times in different ways, is that this is really a collective assignment. And it is time to do it now. We should start shaping and creating support new transformative structures that are able to recognize women equal to men, and also therefore produce human, not gender centered societies and food systems. Let's talk about us as humankind altogether. Coming back to my daughter to wrap up, she's actually having her 2-year birthday exactly in a month on the 14th of March. And I have been thinking about what I could give to her. And honestly, after this, I think that the absolute best gift that I can give to her for this birthday and many other birthdays to come as her parent is to really be careful not to box her in any sort of normative cookie cutter gender mold of what she should be like just because she's a girl. I mean, yes, she's a girl, but I really actually want her to define herself what she means, what it means for her, what it means for her to now be a girl and later on a woman if she then wants that. And I think that my job and our job as mothers or aunties or grandmothers or whatever is to really keep our daughters' options open and the thoughts flexible, but above all, their hearts filled with joy and love, because when that joy and love disappears, that's where everything else goes down the drain. At least that's my experience. So with those words, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, you three speakers today, Anna Tibblin, Dina, Saoudi, and Judy, Matu. It's been such a wonderful opportunity for me and for everyone else listening to get a piece of your thoughts. And please, everyone who's listening, do get acquainted with all of these women's work. They do amazing things. We've only scratched the surface. And thank you, Nordic Talks, Nordic Council of Ministers, and the Social Gastronomy Movement for making this podcast possible. And I also want to give out a big shout out to Jennifer Avsi, who has brought us together here today. Without you, we wouldn't be here. So thank you so much, and go out there and act empowered, because you are. Let's just be women and be empowered. Thank you so much for today. Bye.